All right, back again. This time with another great host. We got Brentnie Kincaid in the house. What's going on?
Hey,
How is the Colorado winter treating you?
it's good today. Not too cold,
You
not
guys have already
snowing.
had you guys have already had a couple snowfalls, right?
Oh yeah.
How does that impact the gym? What you guys do at the gym? Obviously, I'm assuming you guys don't run, so that changes. Does it change anything else or not really?
We do run if there's snow sometimes. It just depends on the footing. I think it was last week we had a little light snow and we had a running workout. And um, some people just are like, no, I'm going to ride the bike. We give them the choice, but there's
Right.
people that have their kind of trail running shoes and their gloves and their hats, and they prefer to run over doing other things, so they go for it.
Nice. All right.
Yeah, yeah,
Kind of the same thing as it applies down here in Florida with the rain, except for
yeah,
it's interesting sometimes how passionate people are about wanting to run if that's what's prescribed in the workout. And I'm like, hey, rain's one thing, but lightning is another thing. It's
yeah,
all right that we're not going to run in the lightning today.
yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, you've also had a lot going on at the at CrossFit Mafia recently, huh? Last week you had some L4 evaluations. I know we
Yeah, it was
had
busy.
a ton of folks in the best hour atmosphere, the world there that came and took part in that. How does that impact your gym? What do your members think when you guys do that?
It's tricky. I think that it does a couple of things. There's definitely constraints that have to be put on it because people can't be late. There's a minimum class requirement, a maximum class requirement, and so we don't put caps on classes, and we don't kick people out if they show up 5 minutes late. But I have to do
Yeah.
that in that circumstance. So that makes it a little tricky. But we try to over communicate, like send emails out, post in our like private social through push press, all of the things that we do to communicate with our members. We just try to like make sure that they understand that, and everybody gets it. Like somebody shows up late to class, I'm like, I can't let you in here, and they're like, oh yeah, I forgot. So there's that, and then in general, I think that the it's a fun experience. The
Yeah.
members enjoy having new faces and different coaches and things like that. It definitely is. It can't. I imagine that it could be hard sometimes. Like if it's not number one, it's not who they're used to, right? It's not the relationships that they have with the coaches at the gym and whatnot, in our staff that we have and the people that they know really well. So
Right.
there's a little bit of just like um, like I don't know, not acting normal, I guess, not being as goofy or screwing around.
Oh,
They're more well behaved when there's a level 4 going on, the
that's
members.
that's a
Yeah,
nice thing. That's good that they
yeah,
kind of know
yeah,
to get in line a little bit.
yeah.
I know you guys have been doing some filming there too. Do people get weird when people are filming classes?
Not anymore. We've done so much of that with Cap initially, and
Yeah.
having James oftentimes likes to run around with a camera and take photos just for fun. So like having a camera in our members' face is not uncommon. So they're more than that. They're like, "What are you doing? What's this going to be for?" So
Who's gonna see this? Yeah, right.
yeah,
Yeah, it's always
they
an
don't
interest.
generally care. Yeah,
Yeah, the first time or two, people get kind of awkward and they're weird and they don't know how to act, and then sooner or later they kind of forget that that's going on and just do their thing.
yeah.
Other thing I'm curious about. Well, we got Omar in the house. So glad. Are you Omar? Are you? Is it? I can't imagine it's school break yet. So is this like in between classes? What do we got? Using it for promotion because what is this? I don't know what you're using what for. Oh, I got you. I got you. I got you. I got you. Okay. All right. Well, I won't let your secret out if you are actually working right now and still tuning in on this thing, man. But love to see you here. Um, anyways, what else changes during the holidays? What do you guys do at Mafia as far as like with the holidays? Obviously, this year it's going to be a little bit weird with the holidays being in the middle of the week. Do you guys change programming? Do you guys offer
Uh,
classes on any of the holidays, any of that kind of stuff?
We are closed on Christmas Day and no, Christmas Eve we're actually doing an open gym.
Oh, nice.
So people can come in and get the stuff done. Every holiday season, some from Thanksgiving to New Year's, we do a 100K row challenge.
Oh,
And you could do 200K on a bike as well. And so that keeps people like in the gym on a regular basis. Our open gym times are more pop-in during December than they normally would be for that. And we try to keep the doors open as much as we can so that our members can get in there and get on the machines when they need to. I think from a programming perspective, I like to have more partner workouts during the holidays.
same.
Just more fun that way. And long growth stuff, like everybody likes a like 30-minute thing to do on Saturday morning with a friend. Um, that keeps people engaged. But other than that, um, it's pretty normal stuff.
Business as
Yeah,
usual, that kind
yeah,
of stuff.
yeah.
Cool. Well, speaking of programming, what I wanted to discuss today was determining the stimulus of a workout. And nowadays, I think a lot of gyms are using programming from some company out there that provides the workouts for them. Most of the time, the program provides the stimulus of the workout or the time or what they expect it to take, potentially scaling options and things like that. Um, so I think there's less of us coaches that take the time to really start to understand that concept and really get to know it. But it's so important that we as a coach can look at a workout, determine what the stimulus is, because that's going to impact how we scale it. Even if we know scaling options because they're provided from the program that we're given, we still need to be able to take those scaling options and actually prescribe them to the individual members. So I know you guys follow CAP most of the time, correct?
Hmm.
How do you guys do with your coaches? Do you guys take the stimulus that CAP provides? I know there's sometimes that I look at that stimulus and I'm like, I don't agree with this one. I don't know who thinks they're going to do it in this time or opposite, right? So what's your approach for yourself, for your coaches at your affiliate when you look at a workout that you get from CAP, and how do you guys determine that?
Well, I think in general, my perception on CAP stimulus is that it's almost always more conservative than it is aggressive. So in that case, it allows for when you're thinking about the class plan, generally more time than is necessary. So let's say that the stimulus of the workout that they put in there is 12 minutes. Well, I think more often than not, we probably do it faster than that, and so that's a conservative time block of time, which is okay. It's generally probably better to be conservative on that than it is to underestimate the length of how long a workout will take. But um, I also have this freak in my gym named James Hobart who can really really dial in a stimulus and create some understanding around it for like a top like what's the absolute fastest that we think this thing can be done in, and that can be really helpful as well. But yeah, I think we take the cap, and then there's depending oftentimes also with stimulus is that there's going to be sometimes a modification on the workout depending on how where we are. Like we just were talking about it being snowy in Colorado, and if there's a running workout and there's a blizzard outside, then I have to change that to probably bikes or jump rope or something else. And then we have to change the stimulus potentially overall. So, to answer your question about CAP, I think that it provides kind of some basic parameters, and then we can make those adjustments based off of our athletes, our gear, things of that nature.
So is that something that you do like for your coaches? Hey guys, this is, you see this in the coaches notes, but here's what I want it to be, or here's what I think it's going to be for our athletes, or is it up to your coaches to determine that themselves? Obviously, if you're changing the movements because there's snow and you're not running or something like that, you'll have to take a look at that and change it up. So I'd be curious to know, do you provide any guidance, or are your coaches well-versed enough to be able to kind of determine that stuff themselves?
In general, I think the coaches are well versed enough that they can do that on their own, and it's largely dependent on the class that they have. So, an example would be like our early morning classes are generally going to be the fire breathers. They're going to hit the fastest times of the day. That's going to show up during that class time, and so the coaches that coach that know that, and then coaches that coach different classes throughout the day, they know that that stimulus is going to be a little bit different for the population that they have in their group, and including all the way down, all the way to like our vitality, which is our 55 and up class, that they will do the stimulus will be probably on the top end or the longer end, and with modifications included, like scaling options. So it's the coaches do it on their own a lot. If there's a major change that needs to may take place, then yes, we will do that ahead of time and notify the whole team. So
Okay. Do you know off the top of your head, Amit put in that today's cap workout was the opposite. Stimulus said 10 minutes. I said it at 12 and still like
I
80% went past. I moved the days around. So what we're
I
doing
can.
today is double under sit-ups and wall walks. What is
Mhm.
it? Amit,
It's
what
a it's a partner workout from 2021 CrossFit Games Event 10 is what
ooh,
I have. So that's what we have in there as programmed, and we didn't move
what's
anything around this week, so I don't know what,
workout
these guys are
two, couple of
doing.
3 rounds of 100 deadlifts plus burpee over the bar into 3 rounds of 10 front squats plus burpees over the bar.
I don't think that that's capped today. Maybe
That was
things
like
got
I
rearranged.
think I think that was like I want to say that was a week or two ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
That one
yeah.
it looks familiar. Um, and I'm with you. What was the weight? Wasn't it like 185 or was it 205, something like that? Um, so if we look at this workout, so what was it? Yeah, you're slightly behind. What was the RX load for that thing? Amit? Let's see what he gets here. And Omar, you asked, Brentnie is the owner of CrossFit Mafia. You guys are in Erie, Colorado, so outside of Boulder, kind of in between Denver and Boulder, Omar. Um, let's see. As I wait for the weight for this workout, and I want to
I'm
talk
trying
through
to find
stimulus
it.
of this thing. Yeah. Brad's got the question. Do you like to think of stimulus in terms of reps accomplished, times completed, or in terms of feel and how you want the athletes to feel after the workouts? My answer to that is yes.
All of the above.
All of the above. And here's what I struggle with. Like what I've struggled to get is everybody to feel the exact same way after a workout, right? Because to some degree it's a little bit different. Things are harder for me than they are for Brentnie for certain things, right? And so I know personally, I don't care what it is, but if the workout has running in it, I am smashed. Like running just destroys me, especially if there's any sort of weightlifting in it. Whereas if something is just gymnastics, if it's like a Cindy style workout, like if there's not running or there's not a heavy barbell, I can do it and I can perform pretty well and I don't get smashed. So the feel of the workout, as far as what the athletes actually feel, in my opinion, if I get the time, overall time for the workout and the rough reps per round correct, then I'm okay with that. Then I know that people feel roughly the same, quote unquote, based kind of on what their strengths and weaknesses are. So that's where my head's at with that. We added to this thing, so it's 155 pounds. I'd be curious to know, as far as that question from Brad, Brentnie, what is your thought as far as stimulus in terms of reps accomplished, time completed, terms of feel, and how you want the athletes to feel? What do you got?
Yeah, I think it's all that all of that is something to consider. And with regards to, I'm right with you. I'm the complete opposite of you. A workout like Cindy would smash me into the ground. I would be broken from that, and it would be really hard to push for that. And also, like the aftermath of it the next day would be really tough. So the reps completed, not only like big picture, but also within the rounds themselves, and how fast those should be done, how many sets they should be done in, time completed, big picture stuff, as well as like your set of double unders should take this much time, so shrinking it down. And then the feel, I was just thinking about this, the feel of the workout. I think that the best way to kind of, and we can talk about this further down the road today, but that's where it when we're coaching and giving like focus to individual athletes based off of their skill level. So, a beginner, an intermediate, and an advanced athlete, and everywhere kind of in between and on that spectrum, you want people to feel something different. So I don't want my beginner athletes to feel the same way after the end of any workout as my advanced athletes should, in general. Like and that's because that has to be earned, and I don't expect them to be able to go that way, right? To go hard in the pain cave the way that my advanced athletes might be able to.
But at the same time, you want roughly the same time duration, right?
Exactly.
Of that
Yeah.
workout.
Yeah.
And
It should
you
take
want
the same
sets to be
time.
the same. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. With you there. So let me see. We'll get back to the workout in just a second, but Brad adds, lately we've been giving minimum reps and times, and then the high end of the fire breathers could achieve X reps or time domain. Give me a little more context to that. I would assume what you're doing is what I do oftentimes, where I'm like, hey, we've got a set of 20 pull-ups. Here's what I need. I need that done in no more than 4 sets. So that means we've got a minimum of 5 sets. And then if I've got some of those more advanced athletes, I might push them to be like, hey, don't play it safe. I want you to try to do unbroken sets today. I think that's where you're headed with that, Brad. And if that's the case, man, then that's exactly, I think, how it should be done. It's like, we've got this spectrum. I've got somebody in the gym that can do 20 pull-ups in a row, and I'm going to push them to do so. But I've got other people that I'm going to let potentially like do the 20 reps if they can get it done in 4 sets or less. And so that's my window. And now that's the parameters of that thing. Let's see. Brad says, we want everyone to accomplish 30 reps in the SAM Our fire breathers could achieve as many as 50 reps in the SAM Yeah, absolutely. Right. That's the range right there. It's like, hey, and so in that scenario, then probably like the stimulus I'm looking for is 40. Right? It's like, hey guys, I want most of you guys to be right around 40 reps. That means at a minimum, some of you guys that are maybe I'm letting go a little bit heavier today or a little bit newer and aren't going to move as fast, you want to get to 30. And then, Brentnie, I know you're a fire breather. I want you to push the pace. Let's see if we can go north of 40 and get closer to 50. So yeah, I think that's the kind of range that we're looking for more often than not when it comes to that stuff. Let's see. All right. Pat says this. Todd, you don't give the weights of a workout at your gym. Do you take advantage of that to indicate reps you should be able to achieve with what gets put on the bar? Is that why you don't post it? Yeah. So for those of you guys that don't know, I think a lot of people that have been involved in the knowledge in affiliate university know that's the case. So we don't have an RX that goes posted on our online workout posts. Also, we don't put it on the board for anybody. Now the coach knows what the RX is. Like there is an RX weight behind the scenes, and inevitably in classes, somebody will ask the question, hey, what's the most I can put on here? But we started that when I opened my gym now going on almost 14 years ago as a way to do exactly what you say there, Pat, of like, I didn't want people chasing an RX just because they could when they not necessarily should. And so by not putting the weights on the board, RX was what I told you were going to do, not what you saw written and thought you should do. It's evolved kind of over the years as far as the way that people approach that, but it kind of set the tone early on, especially when I was a lot newer to this and didn't know how to handle situations of people chasing the RX. I was like, hey, if there's not an RX to chase, you're just probably going to listen to me. I know you guys do it different than that, Brentnie. How do you handle somebody that's like, no, it says 225, I'm going to do 225. And you're like, clearly you can't do 225.
Yeah. That's similar to you. Like we have a culture at our gym of like coaching and listening to the coach, and we have your best interest in mind. So it's not about like and our members also, we talk about stimulus a lot. And so when we're talking about doing RX, for me, that also means that you did it within the time that that we're shooting for. So it's not just, And I'm curious about your weight at your giving loads for like benchmark workouts and stuff like that. Do you show that? Do you give that to them for those?
I mean, we take it off, like it's not
Or they
posted. I
just
go
know?
through. Yeah, they'll know. And if it's a benchmark
Yeah,
and they've done it before, and like I said, it's like inevitably the coach, like nobody, it's not lost on anybody in class who the best athlete is. And so when I
sure.
go up to AJ and I'm like, hey, you're going to do 225 today, then everybody's like, oh, okay, that's
Gotcha.
RX. Got it. And then I walk to the person next to him and say, whether, whatever that weight is. And so, like I said, none of that stuff's lost. And usually when it is a benchmark workout, especially if it's a traditional CrossFit benchmark workout, people will see the workout posted on our thing with no weights, and then they go scour the internet and they'll come
Yeah.
walking in and they'll be like, no, the internet said this. And I'm like, no, our RX for this workout, we'll do this a lot of times with hero workouts where there's hero workouts that that I'm like, this could never be programmed in a 60-minute class
Yeah.
at the loads and reps and all of that kind of stuff. And so I will morph it, and our version of the RX will be different. And so people will come in with this assumption that's like, I went on the internet and I looked, and I'm like, no, our RX is actually this. Once again, this is why we kind of do it the way that we do it.
Yeah.
But I want
I
to,
think that added the loading, I think is something that it's just, I think that it's helpful if you're going to put weights on the board for a load that you explain what that means. Like, so that, something like that means that the fittest athlete in the gym, whoever you guys can picture who that is, who they are at the top of your own leaderboards, they will be able to do this amount of reps in this amount of time at that load, and it's going to look really great. Like, it's going to look awesome, as opposed to you can do the weight, but you shouldn't because it looks like garbage, or because you're not going to be able to do it fast enough. So like those are the parameters to kind of like put around the loading.
I love the way you covered that, of like the weight on the board in and of itself means nothing, right? If there's no context behind it. And that's our job as coaches, to give context. And so whether you write it up there and then give context by saying, so it says 225, here's what that means to you. Set should look like this, round should look like this, that's it. Or you don't put it up there like I do, and I just give the context myself. Now, the other thing that you made mention here, and this is one of the big things that I want to talk about, and we can kind of talk about it with this workout. So the workout is, and this was from Cap, and it was, I think he said November 16th.
Yeah, it was hard.
Yeah, it was awful. I remember doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, the RX load was 155 and then I think 105. And so 3 rounds, 10 deadlifts plus 10 burpees over the bar, and then right into 3 rounds of 10 front squats plus 10 burpees over the bar. And the stimulus that was put into Cap was 10 minutes. And so you made mention of the stimulus being determined by the best athlete in your gym. Now, you're an anomaly. You've got James and Cassandra that comes to your gym, right?
Mm-hmm.
If James wasn't a member at your gym, is it him, like his archetype as far as an athlete, what you're going to determine the stimulus for? Or is it going to be somebody like Nick? I've been to your gym enough to know like some of your better athletes, and Nick is one of your better athletes, right?
Yeah, and we have a couple of women that are also fire breathers as well. So, no, not really. James is kind of an anomaly, and so is Cass. But the other couple, there's a few others, boys and girls at our gym, that are going to be able to do the work in the time domain allotted as well, most of the time, and do everything RX, and they would be our like advanced athletes. And we usually kind of like think about it through that lens of both. Like, okay, James is probably going to do it like this, and then our other advanced athletes will do it here. And it's not that far off in general. Like, and James would yell at me for saying this, but he's not an elite athlete anymore. Just because he's been to the games a lot of times, he's not in that category anymore. So
there's probably a wheelhouse workout that he will just dominate everybody with, but the rest of the stuff is, if it's not just straight wheelhouse. But like looking at this workout, so if we look at this, somebody like James, 10 deadlifts at 155 can be done literally in 10 seconds, maybe call it 20 at the most, and then 10 burpees over the bar. Once again, is 30 to max 40 seconds. So that's 1 minute rounds. And if you factor into fatigue there, you can call that 4 minutes. And then front squats, 10 front squats at 155 for somebody like James. Same deal. That's 30 seconds maybe. And then he probably keeps up a pretty good pace on the burpees over the bar, maybe another 40 seconds there. And so that's another 3 to 4 minute rounds. And so you can look at that and be like, hey, that's 8 minutes for somebody of James caliber, and Cass probably the same, and maybe some of your other fire breathers. So then you bake in a little bit of time for fatigue and things like that. And I think that's where Cap ends up with that 10-minute window. Now, the thing that I always try to think about is not like, what is the absolute fastest time for my best athlete, or somebody that this workout is going to be in their wheelhouse for. It turns into like, all right, what is that stimulus going to look like for the athlete that I'm going to let do this RX? Like, where is the end point of like, hey, I'm going to let somebody do this at 155 with all of the reps if they can do it in X amount of time?
Yeah.
And that's like, if I'm letting them do it RX, then clearly they're an above average athlete. They're probably like back in the day when quarterfinals was top 10%, they're probably close to that realm. And so then all of a sudden, Amit, to your point, like, I think 12 minutes ends up being pretty, like 10 to 12 is pretty realistic, because now those 10 deadlifts, I'm going to give 45 seconds for. The burpees over the bar, I'm going to give a minute for. And so now these are closer to 2-minute rounds on the far end. And so that's how I'm going to set my stimulus. I'm like, yep, I still think 10 minutes will be the fast end. 12 is probably where I want the max for the person I let go RX. And so in my lesson plan, I'm probably allotting close to 13-ish minutes. What's your thought with that, Brentnie?
Yeah, I think you're right on point. That's why a lot of times, I mean, this makes me a little nuts when you say like, what's the stimulus? I want to know the time. And for me, that means in my head, that's the average, and that there will be a percentage of athletes that are faster than that, and there will be a percentage of athletes that are lower than that. But if I take the average across all of the scores on my board at the end of the day, the average time domain should be this. And so that might be for this workout, it's 10, and for our gym that was spot on. There was a couple of floaters that went up against 12, and then most were right around that, right under sub 10-minute mark, and then just a couple of that went really fast and did sub 8. So there is, but the average is the time that we're looking for, and we should be thinking about it in terms of our athletes that are in our gym on a day-to-day basis, because it's going to come up, like to your point, who are you going to let do it RX? There's going to be somebody that's like, oh man, this is kind of like, I really like the deadlifts, the weight's the right weight, I can move through the burpees, I think I can do it, but it's going to be close. I'm going to push up against that 12-minute mark, coach. Is that going to be okay? I don't think I'm going to hit 10. And be like, okay, great. That's where the coaching comes into play, where it's like, oh, if you think you can do it, and I have confidence.
And I agree. And I agree to the negotiation today. I decide that I'm going to allow you to do that today.
Yeah.
Even though I want it to be 10 minutes. Like, you know what? You've earned the right for me to allow you to do what you want to today, and not just what I know that you need to. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. And that's a conversation. Those are conversations that should be happening every day. And there's going to be different circumstances that allow for athletes to be like, hey, I feel good today. This is kind of my wheelhouse. I really like it. I want to try it. Okay. Off we go. Like, and you push them and you do what you can to see if they can get that in the time domain. And sometimes you miss, and they're like, oh, I bit off more than I can chew. And that's okay. You can make adjustments in the middle of the workout if needed. Or you, as a coach, you're like, okay, you went a minute longer than you thought, and you can make that adjustment in the future about, that with that particular athlete if you need to. But yeah, I think that's why there's a range.
Yeah. And you making mention of like making adjustments in the middle too is critical. And that's why it's so important that coaches don't just check out once the workout starts and it's like, sweet, I got my fire playlist, I'm going to put this on, and then they're going to go and do their things. I hope it turns out well. Like, this is where, hey, I need to know that athlete that I am giving the green light to do this as prescribed, I need to see where they're at. Are they on pace to get to that 12 minutes if that's kind of what we agreed on? Is the weight feeling the way they expected it to? Because how many times in a warm-up is somebody like, yeah, I think I can do this. This feels pretty good. And you get to round number 2 and you look at the look on their face and they do a set of like 2 front squats instead of the 6 that they had planned. And you walk over and you're like, yeah, you want to go 135? And they're like, yeah, thanks. And you help them take the weight off and you get them through to the end and they actually hit the time that you want them to. So all of that stuff is so important. Yeah. Now, here's a tough one for you. I've got to work at it. I'm curious to know your thoughts on stimulus for this thing. So I'm going to bring it up. Let's go with this top one. Let's see where we're at. We're going to start with the top workout here. I want you guys not to pay attention to the bottom one for now. We're going to go 3 rounds, 600-meter run, 15 squat cleans at 115 and 75, and 21 chest to bar pull-ups. What do we got? What is your stimulus? How are you determining this thing?
Oh, okay. So, well, I think that what's cool about this workout is that you've got, sometimes I like to look at it and be like, there are people in my gym that can run really fast, but their squat cleans and or their pull-ups are not awesome. So I kind of like try to build together like what would be the best case scenario if I had if it was a combo of somebody that could be a really fast runner, good barbell cycling at this loading because it's not that heavy, and then also can stay on a pull-up bar for long enough to do this. Like, what does that look like with somebody that can really put the hammer down on this workout? I think that if breaking it down into pieces, and I might be way off base here, but I just did a brief when you sent it to me this morning. That run, I think, could be right around 2 to 2.5 minutes. We've got a 15 squat cleans. I think that is doable in a minute, probably 30 seconds for somebody that is really strong, because the loading is light. And then the chest to bar pull-ups, that's the tricky part because it's going to start off fast and then it will disappear. And they'll start to get slower and more broken up. So somebody that has chest to bar pull-ups unbroken for 21, they might do that in round 1 and that's going to take under a minute. But in round 2 and in round 3, now we're pushing closer to 2 and 3 minutes to get that thing done because they're going to break it up. So round 1 will not look like round 3 in this thing.
Yeah.
So
more than likely not.
Yeah. So that's the big thing on this workout is that it's not, and the cleans will make the chest to bar pull-ups exponentially harder as they work through this workout. So one fast round and then the others will not look the same after that. So I think a time domain of, I don't know, like 12 to 14 minutes. What were you thinking on this?
All right.
That's fast. That's moving.
This is something that's really fast. So like,
yeah.
Your thought of the 2 to 2.5 minutes for a 600-meter run is cooking, especially at altitude. Like that is burning it up. I don't typically look at what is the fastest. I'm looking at like, what's the average for above average people. And so a 400-meter run for me it's 2 minutes.
2 minutes. So, so
if
3
we're adding an extra
6.
2, I'm going 3, right?
Yeah.
And I even look at like 15 squat cleans. Can it be done in a minute or under a minute? Absolutely. But to your point of over the course of this workout, like even something like Elizabeth, like 3 to 4 second reps as you get tired and your heart rate's up because of the run and the chest to bar pull-ups, like I think that's closer to 90 seconds and maybe even upwards of 2 minutes as you go. Mm-hmm. Like 8 cleans in a minute once you're pretty fatigued is, in my mind, still pretty good. And something, well, I'll get back to that. So I would probably look at that at like 1.5 to 2 minutes. So now we're sitting at 4.5 to potentially 5. And then to your point, even my people that are really, really good at chest to bar pull-ups typically aren't good for 3 rounds of 21. Like chest to bar pull-ups and regular pull-ups are completely different animals. And 21 reps is so much more than 15 reps and so much more than 10 or 12 reps. And so probably same thing there. I'm looking at like 90-ish seconds because I'm going to go, all right, say somebody strategically handles this well and it's 7 reps. They're going to do sets of 7 every 30 seconds-ish. And to be honest with you, like you said, round 3 is going to be completely different than round 1. And so that's probably going to slow down. And even if they planned on doing sets of 7, it might get lower than that. So with that, now all of a sudden I'm looking at like a 6-minute round, to potentially a 7-minute round. And so my mind, it's like 18 to 21. And then what I'll always do, like I already mentioned earlier, is like, all right, what athlete that I have that is close to RX, where is going to be the line that I'm going to draw? What am I going to look for to let that athlete do this thing RX? Like, what's the absolute drop dead time? Because I think you could very easily be like, hey, I don't want any more than 6 minutes per round of this thing. This is a 18-minute workout, and I'm just going to scale everybody to make that happen. Cool. You could lighten the weight on the cleans. You could shorten the run distance. You could shorten the number on the chest to bar pull-ups to something that could be done in 3 sets or less, or you could turn it to regular pull-ups and absolutely get everybody in class done in under 18 minutes. But if I'm going to let some of my above average athletes do this thing as prescribed, what's the absolute in time frame that I'm going to look for? And in my mind, it's probably closer to like that 21 or 22 minute mark. And so in my head, stimulus is closer to 18. I'm going to allow for up to about 21 or 22 minutes. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that, like I said, I think about it in terms of like, what's the robot fastest thing that can happen. And I think that it can be done in 15. There might be freaks out there that could do it that fast.
Somebody like James or Cass or somebody like that.
Somebody
right?
can do it. Somebody can do that. I don't, you got to be both, you got to be both an efficient runner so that the run doesn't take anything out of you and fast, and then also be able to do lots of pull-ups unbroken. So that's kind of what this comes down to.
Yeah.
And so it could be, the time window that you might see in your class could be as fast as 15. And I like 21. I think a 7-minute round is really appropriate, especially for your athletes that they know that the loading is not it's not heavy. This is a 115 75-pound barbell, and so it's more going to come down to like they don't want to do it. And that's kind of the way that I would talk about it with my athletes is like, you guys, the weight's not heavy, and it's going to feel nice for like 8 reps, and then after that you're not going to want to do it anymore. And it's the 15, it's the reps that are hard of the squat clean that you're not going to want to do. And the chest to bar pull-ups, at that point your grip is taxed, and you're going to want to, in your head, come off of the bar every 3 to 5 reps when I need you to try to hang on for 7 to 10, especially in the first round. Like this is more of a that there's a lot of opportunity for it to be mentally hard. Like mental toughness is going to play a role in this workout a lot, and not wanting to keep going.
Because all 3 of these movements are going to spike your heart rate like crazy. Like whether you can physically do more or not, your body and your heart rate's going to be like, you probably need a longer break. And so, yeah, Brad, I'm with you. Like you put here, like 18 minutes on the faster side, right? And I like most of my athletes, I'm going to put it this way, most of my athletes, I'm going to scale. Like I don't have many people that I'm going to have do this thing as prescribed. And so most of them are probably going to be a little bit lighter on the cleans, and they're going to either be less reps on the chest to bar or it's regular pull-ups. And so most people are going to be done in 18 minutes, but there are a couple people where I'm going to be like, yeah, for the sake of today's workout, I want you to accumulate some volume. Maybe the open's coming up, and we know, that's when chest to bar pull-ups always show up. And I don't know about you, but like even looking at cap, there's not a ton of chest to bar pull-ups that show up that often, right? Which is another reason why this, I think, is such a hard workout to do. But I also think this one is a hard one for coaches to come up with a realistic stimulus. You know what I mean? Because the back of the napkin math, like you did right there, where you're like, hey, I could see this being done in 15 minutes. And then if you factor in like, a little bit slower, we'll go 18. Well, if you don't realize what's going to happen on those chest to bar pull-ups and what's going to happen heart rate wise, you're going to wonder why either everybody, if you put time caps at your workout, why everybody hit the time cap that you let do at RX, or if you don't put time caps, why everybody blew your timeline because they weren't able to get it done in 18 minutes when you looked at it and thought that could be the case. So anyways, I think something to think about there. Now, we've talked about this with how do we approach this with our different athletes? And that's one of the things. It's like one thing to come up with the actual stimulus of the workout and what you want the time duration to be and what you want the rounds and reps to look like. But now, how do you approach this for a beginner athlete in your gym? How do you approach this class with an intermediate and then also an advanced athlete? And how do you Like it's more than just simply scaling. Like how do you manage those three different skill levels in class?
Yeah, within those categories, there's always people that are kind of like, they're really good at something. Like I have a beginner athlete at my gym that I'm thinking about, and he's really an excellent runner, and fast and efficient, doesn't seem to get tired from running. And so, and he's relatively new to CrossFit. So the hang up, as for a beginner, that has the engine to do the running, kind of let that be what it is. And then I would try to probably either to kind of like develop the skills of either the squat clean or the chest to bar pull-ups, depending on who they are. But it's definitely something to consider. Like both of those are hard. Both of them are a higher skill. One high skill barbell, the other is kind of not top end gymnastics, but it's definitely harder than a regular pull up.
Yep.
And we want to be able to let the athletes, especially beginner athletes and intermediate, both of them feel like they're moving forward, right? It's not just that you've been pigeonholed and you're going to do a training bar on the squat clean, or you're just always going to do ring rows until you get pull-ups. Like, how can we develop the skill set in order to move them forward? And so, I mean, the obvious thing for a beginner athlete is making sure that you're conservative on like the volume. So reducing the distance of the run if it's needed, reducing the reps and the loading, both of the squat clean, and then reducing the volume on the chest to bar pull-ups, even if it is scaled to a regular pull-up or ring row or jumping pull-up or something like that. You still might reduce the volume on it because it's just a lot. This is a lot of reps going on. And like you said, it's got a high heart rate component across the board. And there's not a beginner is going to be like, oh my gosh, when do I get to like catch my breath for a hot minute? So, but I do think that it's tricky in this workout to go after, you might prioritize the clean, you might prioritize the pull up. It just depends on the athlete that's in front of you, but we do have to kind of say, I'm going to choose this one thing that is going to be the focal point for the day, and everything else is going to not be easy, but it's going to be a really sustainable movement and rep scheme for the rest of the workout. So, yeah.
I like that. It's like, hey, we want to be deliberate and we want to come into the class with a plan. Hey, what is it that I want people to accomplish today? Do I want people
Yeah.
to, accomplish the volume of that kind of loading on squat cleans, or is it a chest to bar pull up and like a pulling workout? And in my mind, that would be the priority for me in this specific workout. Now, I think Brad asked a good question here. Bottleneck is going to be the volume of the chest to bar pull-ups. Yep, which totally agree on that one. Do you like giving people a time domain to knock out as many chest to bars as possible, or do you want to get them a certain volume? What's your thoughts on that, Brentnie? Have you ever done, hey, I want you to do X movement for this amount of time? And when do you think that's appropriate?
Not really. So the only movement that we usually put time constraints on is kind of like the jump rope stuff, double unders and things like that, because people will just avoid it and not practice. And I'd rather them practice than not do it at all. So, but with a pull up thing, I instead of putting, hey, you can get as many as you can either get to 2 minutes. I think this is what Brad means. You either get to 2 minutes of pull ups or you get to 30 reps, whichever one of those comes first, and then you're out the door. I do like that for big workouts like Murph. We do use that for sure, because there's just no reason to like do it for 2 hours. And with a workout like this, more on a ever standard workout with gymnastics, pull-ups, push-ups, handstand push-ups, it's more, I think I like to steer more towards the number of sets you're going to do. So you get to do, let's say that the maximum number of sets that I want to see happen in 21 chest to bar pull-ups is 4. It's always going to be 4. And if that means that in the first round you do 4 sets and you get to 21, and then in the second round you do 4 sets and you get to 18, then it is what it is. And if the third round you do 4 sets and you get to 12, okay, then it's 4 sets, and you scaled, the volume got progressively lower, which is totally appropriate at that point, for them to be doing less, as opposed to now which is the opposite, where people are going to do, okay, it took me 4 sets, then it's going to take me 6 sets, then it's going to take me 10 sets. And you're like,
Right.
okay, that's too, like, this is, you're getting a beat down in the wrong way at this point. So
When I think a challenge for that approach in this style workout is, like we've already talked about, what's going to happen to your heart rate. And therefore, you're going to, the rounds 2 and round 3, by the time you get to the pull up, you're going to not want to do anything. You're going to
right,
want to hook grip your shorts and just stand there. And like, if I had an out of, hey, do as many pull-ups as you can in 90 seconds, it's
just stand
literally like
there.
one set. I'm going to do 4. I'm going to come off. I'm going to look for a chalk bucket. And I'm going to grab my water bottle. And then I'm going to be like, oh, 90 seconds. I'm out the door. So I think in a workout like this, where there's rounds for times and things like that, I would want to prescribe a volume of reps, or like you said, a number of sets. Hey, I don't care what the reps are, but I want 4 sets and then you're out the door, whatever that is. Now, to your point, like typically the double unders is where we do something like this, do as many as you can in a minute, more often than not, even like in rounds of workouts. But if I was going to do it for a workout with something like pull-ups, it would be a workout like Angie that starts with 100 pull-ups. Then we've got 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats. Well, I don't have many people that need to do 100 pull-ups in a row at my gym. And knowing what I want the stimulus to be for that workout, I would probably be like, hey, you're going to do as many reps as you can for 4 minutes, and then you're going to move on to the push-ups. And so in that scenario, kind of like you mentioned, in my mind, that's similar to kind of Murph, where it's like you just don't need to be there all day chipping away, because it's going to take you forever. Maybe in that scenario, if there was a big volume at the beginning of a workout, or more if it was a chipper style workout where it wasn't necessarily like your heart rate that's making you stop and waste time, it's just your ability to do the movement, I might put some time parameters on a pull-up or something like that in that scenario.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Like the big chipper ones are definitely, and we do that exact same thing with Angie. Any of those 100 style workouts is
That one is,
like this.
yeah.
This is not allowed to take longer than this amount of time, and so on. And this is, and wherever you're at is good. Get out the door, and do the next thing. Yeah, I like that a lot.
All right, let's see. Brad's got another good question. Do you take into consideration athletes who have a goal of competing locally if they know they want to work on chest to bars for the open qualifiers and this is their chance to practice? Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why, to the discussion I had earlier around why I would probably allow for like 21 to 22 minutes for that athlete, like somebody who can do chest to bars, but clearly isn't knocking out big sets. I still think they can and should get this workout done in that early 20-minute range, 21, 22 minutes. And this is exactly it. If I've got an athlete that's like, hey, this year I'm going RX in the open, so I know you're going to need a higher volume of chest to bar pull-ups, this is a great workout to do that. So I think this is absolutely the chance to practice that thing. And I account for that. I know going into it, this workout, I'm going to allow a little bit more wiggle room for people to do some of these movements. What else does he ask? How do you handle that if you know they can't do the volume? Is that something like, Brad, tell me more. Is that on a workout like Angie? If they can't do the volume of 100 pull-ups, how do I handle that if that's the case? Like, I always revert back to the concept of like, what should the sets look like? So even if we're doing something like Angie and I don't put a 4-minute time cap on their pull-ups, I look at Angie and I'm like, all right, it's 100 pull-ups. If I'm going to let somebody do this as prescribed, they should be able to do 10 sets of 10 to accomplish those 100 pull-ups. So if I look at an athlete and I know they can only do sets of 5 at a time, more than likely, I'm like, all right, 10 sets of 5. What's that going to be? That's going to be 50 reps. And probably with fatigue, if 5 is their max set, we're probably going to do less and we're going to go with 40. And I'm like, I need this done in 10 sets or less. Same thing.
So it looks like he's specifically talking about the athlete that wants to do chest to bar pull-ups for practicing for open qualifiers and things of that nature, but they cannot handle that volume, but they insist on they want to practice. And I like this question. I think that that's good because You can do both. You can give them the opportunity to practice chest-to-bar pull-ups, and reduce the volume that they're going to do in the workout. So you could do one of two things, or there's really unlimited amount of options when it comes to scaling sometimes. So
Right.
you could have an athlete, let's say that they cannot do the X amount of chest to bar pull-ups in a row, and the beginning of every round, that's the set that they do of chest to bar pull-ups, and then after that they go to regular pull-ups to finish their set. Or you just reduce the total volume of chest to bar pull-ups that they're working on, so that they can continue to work on it. So instead of doing 21 chest to bar pull-ups in the workout, maybe they do 15 or 12 or something like that, as opposed, because they're going to need to break them up, because they do need to practice the skill and be able to do them, but they can't handle yet the higher volume yet. So I think that you can do both. You could incorporate the skill plus volume by making a combo between chest to bar pull-ups and regular pull-ups, or you can just focus on chest to bar pull-ups and reduce the volume and allow for them to practice the thing. There's lots of ways to go about it.
Yeah. And like you said, there's a ton of ways. And so, hey, if I've got somebody that's like, literally, I want to do 63 chest to bar pull-ups in this workout, and they're going to be doing singles, I'm like, cool. If I decide, I'm like, all right, maybe we can do that. We're going to do 400-meter runs,
Yep.
and your barbell is going to be 95 pounds or it's going to be 75 pounds. And now I know it essentially the time duration per round is going to be flipped. Instead of 3 minutes for the run and 90 seconds to 2 minutes for the chest to bar pull-ups, I'm going to allow for about 3 minutes for the pull-ups, which means I'm going to turn the run into 2 minutes or less, and I'm going to turn the squat cleans into 90 seconds or less. And now it's like,
Yeah.
cool. I think that's like an opportunity to do something like that. And
Yeah.
as long as we're intentional with some of this stuff, I think there's a ton of value to be had. All right. It's like, do we know our athletes? Do we know what their goals are? They're wanting to compete in the open, and they want to compete in local competitions, and chest to bar is a skill that they're working on turning into bigger sets. Cool. Let's focus this whole workout on that.
Yeah.
Um,
And
so
that's the case with when you were talking about like managing the beginner, the intermediate, and the advanced. That's exactly what I meant by like the kind of compromising other things or adjusting other things in order to accommodate goals, right? In order to accommodate working on a weakness, or whatever that might be. And you could flip it, and it's not chest to bar pull-ups at all. Maybe it's barbell cycling for competition. Like they need to learn how to do that faster. And so we're going to pump the brakes, reduce the volume, or make the chest to bar pull-ups kind of a little easier, if you will, and then allow for them to practice that barbell cycling and really focus on it at the loading that you want them to do it at. So there's there's a million ways that you can adjust a workout in order for it to fit the stimulus and the athlete's skill level and the athlete's goals, all together at the same time, which is kind of like the magic of having a coach's focus per athlete.
yeah, and you're going to have that focus based on getting to know your athletes, right? The
Yeah.
more questions that you can ask, the better you know them and understand them. Like, what are your goals is going to dictate what my help for their focus is. And there's also people like where I've got athletes that just want, like, they like something and want to do more of that. Now, that's not always necessarily the best thing in the world for their fitness, but if that's going to give them a win for the day, and I'm like, I got somebody that just likes the barbell and they don't really like gymnastics because they're better with the barbell and they're not as good with the gymnastics. Well, for overall fitness, I know what I want to push them towards, which is their weaknesses. But if I also know them well enough to know that they need a win today, maybe I'm like, hell yeah, I'm going to let you sandbag whatever else you want. You don't want to run as far. You want to do regular pull-ups or do less reps, and you just want to hammer that barbell. Cool. We're going to do that today. And I'm going to give you that intentionally. So like you've said multiple times, there's so many ways to go about this. But planning them and us as coaches determining them and not just letting our athletes make the decisions for themselves, I think is an important piece. One last workout. I know we've only got a couple minutes left here, but I want to look at this one. 4 rounds, 100 double unders, 40 wall ball shots, 20 toes to bar, and a typo at the end. So what do you got for this one? And what are your considerations when you're looking at this in class?
Considerations are that there's probably going to be a wide range of, I think that the overall time stimulus is going to be a wide range just based off of the double unders. There are people that can rip through 100 double unders really fast. And then there's going to be others that can do double unders well, but they're slower. So, and maybe break them up into smaller sets. So I think that's the double unders is going to kind of like push the time a little bit longer. Wall ball, and then this is a tricky workout for me. I think big picture stuff is like jumping with the double unders, and then the wall ball is essentially, it's not technically a jump, but it feels like that in the legs. So it's kind of a double whammy on the lower leg and the calves and the feet. And then the wall ball combined with the toes to bar is this aggressive hip flexion, hip opening, and hip closing. So quad city for both the wall ball shot and the toes to bar. It's just there's a lot of sneaky redundancy in this workout where it's going to get smoked. When I look at this workout, there are like two people in my gym in particular that I'm like, oh, that's their wheelhouse. They would smash that workout and they would love to do it. And I think that it could be done pretty fast. So what do we think? 4 rounds, a minute on the doubles, probably closer to 2 minutes on the wall ball shots. And because you changed this right before and I had different numbers down, toes to bar, a minute. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I think a 4-minute round is fast. That's considering that's 20 wall balls in a minute and 20 toes to bar in a minute. So, and that's, I think the people that I have in mind that would do that, and this is their wheelhouse, they would be able to do that. And it's cooking. And then everything goes to shit.
Yeah, then it turns into a heart rate workout, right? And those people are insane like that. Once again, that's crazy. And I think that's it. It's like, okay, we can look on the top end and call this a 16-minute workout. Once again, then it's going to...
It's probably more like 20.
Yeah, right? Like, all right, who am I going to let do this RX and what's that time duration going to be? And so now all of a sudden, and I think what Brad put here is probably pretty realistic of, all right, you've got 1.5 to 2 minutes for each movement. Double unders, like 100 in a minute's realistic, but once you get tired, that's going to slow down. So 1.5 to 2 minutes there, I think, is realistic. To your point, the 20 wall balls, like I think unbroken wall balls, like around 30, 32 is like your number that you can get, at least to a 10-foot target. And so unless you're doing this thing unbroken, I would look at this and be like, hey, I want this done probably in 3 sets or less per round. And so that one, I would look at 2, and I'd probably allot for like 2.5 minutes. And then the toes to bar are kind of like chest to bar pull-ups, where it's amazing how somebody has a set of 10 unbroken for round 1. And then in round 3, they're doing singles, right? And so closer to 2 minutes, like 2 minutes per movement, I still think is probably being kind of generous there. So yeah, 24 minutes, this thing, like this once again is super gnarly. And like Kristin says, toes to bar can go away fast. So I'm probably allotting closer to that 25 minutes for this thing, for somebody that I'm going to let do this unbroken or not unbroken.
Give it a go.
Let do this as prescribed.
Yeah. So a top end, we're talking about probably that intermediate athlete that has efficient double unders, can do some big sets of wall balls. They can do some big sets of toes to bar, but we know that the stamina for the higher volume is going to start to peter off into round 3 and round 4, and they're just going to get slower and rest more often. But they can do it.
Yes,
they can do the things, and it looks good. Again, it comes down to us as coaches being like, okay, yeah, I know you can do those things. It looks good when you do those things. The wheels aren't going to come off. There's not a lot of risk here for you trying to accomplish this, and they want to go for it. Yeah, I think that 25 minutes is good for that person. And if you were to pick an average time per class, I would put it right around 20.
Yeah, same. So it's like, so in my mind, 20 minutes is the stimulus. If I have those people that can do everything close to unbroken or big sets of everything, we're pushing north or south of that, 18, maybe 16 on the high end. And then for those athletes that I'm going to let grind a little bit today, it's probably closer to 22, 24 4, somewhere in that wheelhouse. And so then my lesson plan allots for 25.
Yeah. It's just one of those workouts that people would be really pumped to do it for 3 rounds, and 4, they're gonna be upset with you about.
Yeah. This is one too, where you look at it and you're like, well, that doesn't look so bad for whatever, like those movements aren't that intimidating. The reps,
Yeah, sure.
although they look high, they're not that intimidating. You'll get,
4 times though.
oh gosh, devastating.
A
So,
lot. Yeah.
Cabo missed you on this one. Hopefully you landed in, I think you're going to Chicago. Hopefully you made it safely. I think we're right at the top of the hour, guys. Let's see. Brad gave us one last thing. It would be fun next time to chat about how do you weave strategy into the discussion about stimulus in order to do the best? Interesting. Yeah, I think we could have that conversation next time. Yeah, let's try to remember that and save that for next time, because I've got some opinions on that thing. Yeah, Brad, appreciate that one. Brentnie, as always, so great to have you on this thing. What do we have? Yeah, we'll be back next week. I think the 26th after Christmas, we won't be doing this, but then on the 2nd, we'll be back again. But we will definitely be back here next week. So thanks for everybody for jumping on with us, and all the questions and great dialogue. Brentnie, as always, enjoyed it, and look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.